Good afternoon, and welcome to the fifth meeting on MacArthur Park and Proposition 68. Today is Wednesday, February 10th, 2021, and this is a meeting hosted by the Department of Recreation and Parks in partnership with the Office of Council Member Gil Cedillo and Cedars-Sinai. My name is Stephen Tran from the Department of Recreation and Parks, and I welcome you to the fifth meeting on the proposed project at MacArthur Park for Proposition 68 grant funding. Now, you can follow us on Zoom as well as Facebook Live. At the conclusion of the meeting, this meeting will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So this is actually the last scheduled meeting. We've had 4 other meetings, starting back in November 4th, and we had another one November 10th, the 14th, and the last one was last week on February 3rd. So we've had a couple months of engagement, and we'd like to present to you the proposed project after listening to your feedback and your ideas. Some just important meeting guidelines. In your chat box, you'll see a link to a brief sign-in sheet, and I encourage you to sign in for the grant purpose. We want to make sure that we track attendance. There will also be, after the 2 presentations that we have for you, questions and answers. So at any time, if you want to ask a question or you want to comment, please leave your comments, write them in the chat box, and we will read them one by one. At the conclusion of the presentation, we'll have a survey, and that survey will will give you the opportunity to tell us how we're doing and also answer a question that is related to the actual presentation. And to introduce you to today's panelists, we have Luis Gonzalez, the Deputy Director of Community Organization from the Office of Council Member Gil Cedillo. We also have Dr. Jillian Grisham from the Cancer Research Center for Health Equity at Cedars-Sinai. And from Rec and Parks, we have Daryl Ford, our Superintendent for Planning, Construction, and Maintenance. And from the Rec and Parks Grants Administration, we have Bill Jones, our Chief Management Analyst. I'm Stephen Tran, the Senior Management Analyst. And we have Yumi Songen, our Management Assistant. And translating for us into Spanish is Jorge Rodas from Barbier International. And so to give you an idea of today's agenda, first we'll have an opening remark from Luis Gonzalez from the Office of Council Member Gil Cedillo. And then we'll have a presentation from Dr. Grisham from the Cedars-Sinai. And then I will go over the Proposition 68 guidelines and round 3 results with you. And then Daryl Ford will go over the MacArthur Park proposed project for grant funding. And we'll conclude this with questions and answers. So the first thing I'd like to do is introduce you to Luis Gonzalez from the Office of Council Member Gil Cedillo for an opening remark. Luis?
Thank you so much, Stephen, and good evening, everyone. Just would like to thank the Los Angeles Department of Recreation and Parks, for all this work that you've been doing in getting all the feedback and putting it into a presentation tonight. I would like to thank all of you that they are tuning in tonight. I know that it's a middle of the week, it's evening, and you could be doing something else, but you're here with us, listening to this very important presentation. And I just wanted to say that for the council member, this is a very important project, and more than anything, because it's not only going to bring improvements, but also is an opportunity to actually get a few elements that you wanted, that you have asked here in the community. And I just would like to let you know that the department and the team here behind this project, they've been working very hard to get all the input that you have provided the last few months into what right now is going to be the initial design of this project. So we have listened to all your input, And I'm very proud to say that we are be able to put some of those elements in this project. So with that, I'd like to thank you again for being here. Looking forward for this presentation.
Thank you, Luis. So our first presentation today is from Dr. Grisham from Cedars-Sinai. Now, Cedars-Sinai is a partner in the Shine LA initiative, and today's platform will provide us with an opportunity to describe why it's good to have greater opportunities for park usage for the community, as evidenced by science, and why it's important for the department to submit this proposed project for funding consideration. And to tell you a few things about Dr. Grisham, Dr. Grisham is a research scientist at the Cancer Research Center of Health Equity at Cedars-Sinai, and she completed her doctoral training in epidemiology at the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health and a postdoctoral fellowship in cancer clinical trials at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. She was also a visiting scholar at the Center for Clinical Investigation at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. And her expertise is in cancer control and prevention, as well as physical activity and patient-reported outcomes research. So at this point, I'd like to allow Dr. Grisham to speak, and I'm going to exit and allow her to share her screen.
Hello, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for having me today and for the introduction. I'm very excited to be here. As Stephen mentioned, I'm a research scientist and assistant professor at the Cancer Research Center for Health Equity at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. I've now been at Cedars-Sinai for 5 years. And my research interests really are within the field of epidemiology. So I was trained in epidemiology, which is rather broad, but it encompasses cancer epidemiology and cancer outcomes at the intersection of emerging technology and healthcare, as well as physical activity. And I expand that to physical function, activities of daily living, and well-being. So I'm very excited to be able to talk a little bit more about how this fits in with the Shine LA program and also why it matters. And just a little bit more about me. I am an avid user of the park system. I'm from Ottawa, Canada, and as a fun fact, my very first job was as park programmer in our rec and park system at Ottawa, using the outdoor exercise facilities. We have our equivalent of Griffith Park is an 8-mile frozen skating rink that I used every day, either for exercise or even for transportation to school and to work. And my love for the use of parks and recreation continued even when I moved to Los Angeles, where I've spent time boxing in some parks that you may recognize, as well as biking, hiking, running, and really just enjoying all the facilities that there are to offer. So it is near and dear to my heart. And I truly believe in the importance and impact of physical activity, the use of these parks, and how that can improve health outcomes, as well as social well-being and mental health. As I mentioned, parks truly do foster the mental, physical, social, and spiritual health in people of all ages. They advance health equity. They help kids flourish, as well as adolescents, adults, and seniors. They are a powerful prescription to combat chronic disease, and we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. And they do encourage physical activity. And when I use the term physical activity, I don't just mean exercise or sports, but any kind of movement, whether it's play, whether it's stretching, balance, running. There's so many different forms that can be considered physical activity. Unfortunately, physical activity levels remain insufficient and low among the majority of people, and they are one of the leading risk factors for death, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and diabetes. They are also evidence for physical activity disparities. This is especially observed in young girls and minorities where health outcomes are often worse. And we do know that there are benefits, many benefits to physical activity, some that are short-term or immediate, as well as long-term. So this information from the CDC demonstrates the immediate benefits with regards to association between physical activity and improved sleep quality, lower levels of anxiety and depression, reducing blood pressure, which are all related to other health outcomes. And then we can also look at the long-term effects, which include brain health, cognitive function, heart health, cancer prevention for many different types of cancers, maintaining a healthy weight and lifestyle, as well as improving bone strength and improving balance and coordination. And we have shown that it can save and protect lives. So here are some examples of how it has prevented premature death and other types of chronic diseases. These benefits are observed across all ages. So in children, where they've also noted not only improvement in fitness levels and body composition, reducing obesity, but also in attention span and some measures of academic performance. In adults, as I mentioned, again, improving the fitness, mental health, cognitive function, preventing arthritis symptoms, preventing weight gain, and in healthy aging, so where sleep remains important, reducing the risk of falls, improving balance, joint mobility, etc. And there are some direct physical activity benefits in the community, economic, safety, and workforce that continue to carry through and demonstrate the need to maintain physical activity and increase our levels of physical activity. Because I work in cancer especially, we have done a lot of research on the benefits of physical activity on cancer risk. So there is a preventative effect, it is a modifiable behavior, and we have shown that it decreases the risk of several cancers with benefits observed even among people who are overweight, obese, or have a history of smoking. And cancer survivors will be on treatment and even 10 to 15 years beyond any active treatment continue to live longer and have less adverse effects than those who are inactive. And of course, there's an important role for the prevention of cancer as well. Now moving on to parks, what does the research tell us about parks, the design of parks and physical activity? So we have an expert in our group who does a lot of work observing play and recreation in communities, and this is through the SOPark system. The studies that were conducted were observational and based on counting park users using very interesting technology to determine and record what they're doing and what they are in the parks. Results show multiple disparities in park usage, as well as identifying several of the more popular features. And identifying these features and practices led to greater park use and more park-based physical activity. So we'll go through some of these results. First of all, there were some results in terms of disparities in the use of parks. For one, parks are used more by males than females, whether it's young boys, teenager or adults. They are used the most by children and then the least by senior citizens, who represent 18% of the population, but only 4% of those are park users. They are used less in lower income neighborhoods than in higher income areas, even though they are shown to have similar facilities. And this may be due to fear of crime, which is a barrier to park use. And that was found across studies. Programming and marketing have the strongest impact on park use and park-based physical activity. So we can look at the effect of park size, the number of people, reduction in the poverty level. Parks with 4 or more facilities have shown to be to increase park usages. So the x-axis here being percent of park use, 1 or more supervised activity, and then even greater effect on on-site marketing. So this shows the value for marketing in the parks. I've also observed that parks with walking loops have more users, especially seniors. I enjoy using these walking loops as well. And they have shown that 80% more users in parks with the loops than without. and over twice as many seniors. Another thing that's been observed is the level of moderate to vigorous physical activity levels were actually 90% higher, demonstrating physical activity and some sort of perceived effort. Additional park use and park-based physical activity also occurs throughout the park, and the parks without loops were more than twice as likely to be empty during these different SOPARK observations. More playground element types are also associated with greater playground use. So this includes elements such as climbing, sliding, balancing, swinging, spinning, crawlings, and sand and splash pads. So here you can see the effect of these different features on the percent increase in the playground hours that are used by different users. Fitness zones also increase park use and physical activity. These again are widely used throughout the day at any time. It does depend on their placement. They tend to work better when they are clustered, as it was found to have less vandalism. And more new park users were observed after these fitness zones were installed. So it increased users in 6 of 12 parks and increased energy expenditure in 7 of the 12 parks observed in these studies. What we really learned through different research and reviewing the literature is that change and behavioral change, whether it's increasing physical activity, behavior, and improving our systems, depends on a multi-sector, multidisciplinary effort. And the WHO proposes this framework on physical activity, and it's built on these 4 different guidelines, including the active environments, where we want to promote safe, well-maintained infrastructure, facilities, and public open spaces that provide equitable access to places for walking, cycling, and other physical activity. Active societies, which implement behavior change, communication campaigns, and build workforce capacity to change social norms. Active systems, so strengthening the leadership, governments, multi-sectoral partnerships, workforce, research, advocacy, and information systems support effective coordinated policy implementation, and active people, of course, to ensure access to opportunities, programs, and services across multiple settings to engage people of all ages and abilities in regular physical activity. And this leads us to our multi-sector, multidisciplinary effort, which is Shine LA. And the mission of this program is to transform the way Angelenos feel, move, and connect. And we want to do even more than that by serving as a model or as an example for other cities in the future. And this is a 10-year research initiative in the lead up to the 2028 LA Olympic and Paralympic movements towards a brighter future and also beyond for sustained activity. We have partnered with different partners here, including the City of Los Angeles, Department of Recreation and Parks. We also work with different academic institutions such as Stanford University, USC. And we've been working very closely with Art Center, Discovery Cube here in LA, as well as Garmin Technology. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a few slides as well. Some of the work with Art Center has been wonderful. We have thought about different creative ways that we can market and brand Shine LA. We also look at how we may be able to answer important questions, such as how can we promote physical activity in ethnically and racially diverse boys and girls of all abilities? How can we harness the power of community to improve children's physical activity and mental health? And how can we sustain these changes beyond the Olympics? And so we propose a 4-phase research initiative. And again, this is with the different partners that we've been collaborating with since 2019, I believe. And the first phase in years 1-2 involves a formative evaluation of activities conducted in collaboration with recreation and park staff, park users, community partners. We really want to understand how diverse LA communities use their spaces for physical activity and recreation, and get a better understanding of how we may be able to implement and intervene in the next phases, which include examining how social factors and neighborhood environment influence physical activity and well-being, test and evaluate the components of the intervention. So this is really a behavioral intervention that includes not only a mobile health app, but also wearables, signage, subject preferences, goal setting, and incorporating citizen science. So really empowering the park users and the communities to lead these efforts. And then in phase 3 and 4, we are looking at leading or delivering a multi-level, multi-sector intervention in up to 150,000 or more LA children and adults from diverse communities. And again, the overall objective is to improve short and long-term health outcomes and promote and assess the long-term legacy of Shine LA beyond our work and also beyond the Olympics. Some of the work that has been recently completed includes focus groups and interviews where our group met with the Rec and Park staff, users, community partners to better understand how diverse LA communities are using their space. So really trying to understand what is working and what isn't. Some of the initial interview findings, which are continuing to be developed and analyzed, include the emphasis on involving more girls in sport. So this is a really important point. Also a holistic approach to lower income communities, ensuring good quality programming, harnessing the youth culture, promoting safety, and what has emerged in several of the interviews includes partnerships with local schools, businesses, the LAPD, neighborhood councils, community groups, and other LA-based sports organizations and health organizations, so on. So it really is an interdisciplinary and, again, important partnership that we have to continue to encourage. A lot of the work that I do has been focusing on the use of technology. So for example, wearable activity monitors, and how can we use these as tools to motivate physical activity? And not only can we do that, but also monitor their adherence to the use of parks, for example, what types of activities are they doing outside? Encourage interaction and social engagement with the community, with friends, among children. And then gamification. One of the greatest successes includes Pokemon Go, which had, I think, an increase of step counts and physical activity across the entire nation. And it was truly amazing, and people continue to study it today and ask how we can include that kind of gamification in the parks and using these wearables. They track information such as step counts and distance traveled, stairs climbed, the activity intensity, duration, sleep quality, heart rate, cardiac fitness, even SpO2 levels, and air quality and pollution, which again are all very relevant to health outcomes, but can also be useful to engage in your own healthcare and your own physical activity and continue to set personal goals. So quantifying that activity and really being able to show a difference in how park usage, for example, may increase these different levels of activity. So we are going to be starting shortly a pilot study. We're going to interview to look at the prevalence of people who already own or use these wearables. And then in partnership with Garmin technology as well as Fitbit, we would be implementing and providing these wearables to other rec park and users, rec park staff and users who can test these devices and determine whether or not their use promotes and motivates physical activity. So where we are today, we continue to listen to the communities and identify common challenges across parks of different socioeconomic status, including the crime, homelessness in parks, childcare, food insecurity, lack of sports programming, lack of girls in sports. We want to identify common goals and design a menu of simple behavioral pilot interventions to improve physical and mental health among Angelenos. Community-informed research tells us that well-designed parks provide spaces for people to have fun and find mental, physical, and spiritual health and social connection, which is even more true today during these unprecedented times. And Proposition 68 funds really could be used to expand and renovate existing parks in our community and directly improve health and lives. So please, if you have any questions, our programmer, Laurel Finster at Cedars-Sinai, is available to answer them. And I can also include my personal email address in the chat. But thank you so much again for having me, and I'm very excited about the Los Angeles Recreation and Parks.
Thank you, Dr. Grisham, for your presentation. So at this time, we'd like to open up a questions and answers session for anyone who has any questions or comments related to what Dr. Grisham has presented. If you have any, please let us know in the chat box. Okay, I don't see any, but if you have any questions, please feel free, at any point during tonight's meeting to, provide those questions in the chat box, and we will forward them to Laurel and Dr. Grisham. And this concludes, our first presentation for tonight. And then I want to, give my thanks to Dr. Grisham for her expertise and presentation for tonight.
Thank you again.
Thank you. So going back to tonight's presentation on Proposition 68. So the objective of this grant program is to, and actually for tonight's meeting and in this whole series, is to inform you of this funding opportunity. So this is a unique opportunity for us to have, be able to, at our disposal, a large amount of funding, and that's why we are actively suing this opportunity. This is Prop 68, and we want to develop a project that's best, for this funding opportunity. And certainly, as as we did throughout the meeting series, we want to certainly engage the community on this project by, having you offer your ideas and your feedback to shape this whole project. Now, from the previous 4 meetings, we have heard, multiple ideas and comments. You've told us that, you wanted to have playground reservations, a football field, basketball courts, public art, more benches, armrests, and seating areas, barbecue areas. You also expressed the importance of having lake quality improvements, which is a separate project that Daryl will talk about later on. That's being managed by our Public Works and LA Sanitation and Environment Department. And you also told us about the importance of fitness areas and equipment. In addition, you've also told us about your desires for swimming pool, more restrooms, synthetic field repair, fencing, pet-friendly area, and you also suggested certain themes and designs related to animals, Latino culture, and other ideas as well. To give you an overview of the Prop 68 guidelines. So the objective of Proposition 68 is to create new parks and new recreation opportunities in critically underserved communities. The proposition was approved by 57% of voters in California on June 5th, 2018. And we are now in the 4th and final round of the statewide park program funding through Proposition 68. Now, the total amount of funding for this round 4 is about $395 million. This is a competitive grant, which means that funding is not guaranteed. We have identified this project, and we believe that this project is a compelling one for MacArthur Park and this community, and we feel that it would do well in this funding proposal. The maximum grant request per application is $8.5 million. So in essence, our grant request can be no more than $8.5 million. The application has to be complete and submitted to the state by March 12th of 2021. And should we receive an actual grant award for this project, the project must be complete by March of 2025. Now, from the third round, the state has published some results. So there were 478 applications that the state received, requesting a total of $2.3 billion. And that was actually a request for an available amount of funding for $255 million. The average grant request was 4.8 million, and the average grant amount was 4.1 million. Now, out of that 478 application pool, the state awarded 62 grant awards. And out of the 62 awarded projects, 28 were to create new parks, 14 were for expansions of existing parks, and 20 were for park renovations. So this project would fall under the category of a park renovation project. Now, what type of projects are eligible? So they must be capital projects. So the examples include playgrounds, athletic fields, pathways, restrooms, public art, and Daryl will go further in the types of recreation amenities that we are proposing tonight. Now, all applications have to meet one of the following criteria within half a mile of the project site. So within half a mile of the project site, we need to have 3 acres or less of parkland for 1,000 people, or there's got the median household income needs to be less than 56,982. Now, in this particular case, we meet both criteria because the park acres, 1,000 people within a half mile of MacArthur Park is about 1 acre, which is less than the 3 acre threshold for 1,000 people. And the household median income is 32,448, which is well less than the threshold of $56,982. So at this time, I'd like to turn over the presentation to Daryl Ford, our superintendent for planning, construction, and maintenance. And Daryl will go over the proposed project at MacArthur Park tonight. Daryl?
Thanks, Stephen. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Daryl Ford from the City of Los Angeles Department of Recreation and Parks. So tonight I'm just going to walk through what is proposed in this Proposition 68 application, talk a little bit about the current amenities that are available at MacArthur Park, kind of referring back to what Stephen discussed earlier, to go over some of the input that we got from you that was very helpful in shaping this application. And then, as Stephen said, we think that MacArthur Park and the improvements that we're proposing will make for a very compelling and competitive application under Proposition 68. Now, we do know that, of course, this grant is an opportunity for us to do some of the very needed improvements at MacArthur Park. It's certainly won't be able to address everything that we know we'd like to do and that the community would like to do in the park, but we definitely think we should be taking advantage of this opportunity to try and fund some much needed improvements in MacArthur Park and to help make the park a more enjoyable place and a more useful park for all the people who live around it and recreate in it. So on the screen right now is just a very quick summary of all the the various amenities that are available in MacArthur Park, from the lake and the community center, our Levitt Pavilion, our synthetic turf field, and playgrounds, restrooms, walking paths. So, as we know, it's a very busy park. It has a lot of amenities, but like a lot of parks, it can certainly take advantage of an opportunity to make some more improvements in the park that help enhance everyone's ability to enjoy being in the facility. Next, I just wanted to briefly talk about a couple of things that the city is already doing in the park in response, again, to our longstanding knowledge about there need to be a variety of improvements. So I just wanted to talk about 2 particular improvement projects that have already been funded and are moving forward in MacArthur Park. One, as you see on the screen right now, is the replacement of the playground that's located just west of the Recreation Center building. If you're familiar with it, it's a very large playground pit that's half sand and half resilient surface. And we are planning to replace that playground. It's funded through a combination of funds from the Community Development Block Grant, as well as some funds from TFAR that'll be funding the replacement of that playground. So that's a fully funded improvement that will be happening. So essentially, we'll be replacing that playground in the very same footprint it's in, but we'll have an all new state-of-the-art amenity playground, which again will have a lot of different recreation features that we think the community will enjoy. But that's a project that's been funded and will be moving forward very soon. The second project, just to mention here briefly, is the MacArthur Park Lake Rehabilitation Project. This is a very large project that is being managed by our city family, by our partners over at the Bureau of Sanitation and the Environment. So LA San is managing this lake rehabilitation project in MacArthur Park. This project is being funded by $20 million that the LA Sanitation and Environment was successfully received from the Safe Clean Water Program, which is also known as Measure W. So this project is going to modernize some of the existing drain infrastructure in and around MacArthur Park. It's going to make a variety of aesthetic improvements in the lake to help the lake as we capture and treat and the stormwater that comes down Alvarado and through the park. And we try to reuse some of that, both for the lake purposes, but also as it goes to Ballona Creek and ultimately to the ocean. And that project will incorporate a lot of really neat nature-based solutions that'll help enhance the park and really bring better habitat and a better environment. So there'll be a lot of areas where they'll be doing biofiltration. So that's where they'll have places where they can treat the stormwater and then let it infiltrate into the ground. They'll have bioswales. There'll be a rehabilitation of the lake habitat. And then it'll also incorporate a number of wetland enhancements and improvements. So that project will really tackle the lake itself, its water quality, and make a series of improvements to the lake edge, and the areas around it. So that's a very significant and very large project. And obviously, as the community knows, something the lake has needed for a long time. So that's another project that's moving forward in MacArthur Park. It's separate from what we're talking about tonight, but we wanted to, again, make sure to bring it up because it's important that we communicate that we as a city are thinking holistically about the many challenges in the park and the different funding sources and different opportunities that we can work together to address all the different needs. But the Lake Rehabilitation Project is a very big part of restoring MacArthur Park. So tonight, just wanted to focus on what is in the scope that we're proposing for Proposition 68. I'll briefly kind of summarize the scope for the project, and I'll highlight some of the changes that we've made to the scope as we originally started discussing it with the community to what we'll be showing you tonight. So basically the scope breaks down into a few major components. The first one is that we are proposing to do a renovation of the entry of the park on Wilshire and Alvarado. So this is what we're calling the boathouse entry at the southwest corner of Wilshire and Alvarado. So we would redo that corner of the park with new pathways, landscaping, and seating, very similar to what was done conceptually, very similar to what was done at 7th and Alvarado, which we renovated a few years ago to redo that entry. So the idea would be to make that entry much more welcoming and opening, to improve the pathways over there, address that small parking lot and some of the issues in that area, and provide enhanced landscaping, seating, and lighting. We also want to do something very similar for the southwest entry of the park. So this is the corner of Parkview and 7th at the southwest corner. We'd like to, again, do entry improvements there, pathways, landscaping, lighting improvements, just to make that edge of the park, again, much more enjoyable, add more seating, add more lighting, make it a better space for people to use and a much more welcoming entry over there. And in that same corner of the park, we want to add some additional amenities as well. We want to add another playground to that corner of the park to activate it. I know we just heard from Cedars earlier about Shine LA, and we at Recreation and Parks are big believers in adding active amenities. Helps to activate the park. It helps for the health and well-being of children, of families. So we think that adding a new playground in that corner of the park to help activate that corner would be a great amenity. Additionally, we're proposing to make a series of improvements to the restrooms in MacArthur Park. First would be the replacement of the existing restroom building that's located on the Alvarado Street side of the park between Wilshire and 6th. We would replace that restroom with a new freestanding restroom that would be potentially a new automated restroom, which would help us both manage the restroom better, lower our maintenance costs, and we believe make a better restroom environment for all the park users. Additionally, and in recognition really of the real need for more restroom capacity at MacArthur Park, we're proposing to install 2 additional freestanding restrooms in the park. One of those restrooms would be located again in the southwest corner of the park. So again, on the same corner of 7th and Parkview. So we would locate a restroom over in that area, somewhere probably near the proposed new playground. And then we would also add another freestanding restroom on the north side of the park, somewhere between, say, the Levitt Pavilion and the playground. So again, just recognizing that there is a need for additional restroom capacity in the park, we want to make sure to take advantage of this grant to try to address that issue and to provide restrooms in areas of the park where there are not currently restrooms. So the next 3 things just to go through are some of the were added to the scope based on some of the feedback we got, and in particular at the last meeting, where there was a lot of discussion about adding some more active recreational features in the park. So we've added to the scope the addition of 2 new basketball courts, and in a moment I'll talk about where those would be located. We've also added in some additional outdoor fitness equipment. Now we know MacArthur Park has some fitness equipment already, but we're proposing to add in more outdoor fitness equipment. Again, we are big believers that adding that kind of equipment will increase activity in the park, be great for adults and the seniors to use. And additionally, we want to go ahead and replace the synthetic field that's at MacArthur Park. So we did hear some comments at the last meeting and some concerns about the condition and the quality of that field. So we are proposing to add the replacement of that synthetic field in the same location. So we would replace the material for that field as a part of this application. And then finally in this application, we would include various landscaping and lighting improvements as much as we could throughout the park. So we would certainly be concentrating those in some of the areas we talked about earlier, but the idea would be to try to maximize our opportunity on this grant to make general landscape and lighting improvements throughout the park. So the next slide is just a quick image showing conceptually where all of these improvements are that we just talked about. Again, as you can see in the screen, just highlights the general locations where we're proposing to add the new restrooms, where we're proposing to do the corner entry improvements, and the conceptual location for where the basketball courts would be located, which would be just east essentially of the synthetic meadow in the area where the picnic tables were located. So that the idea is to maybe add the basketball courts in that side of the park where there's a lot more activity. And as to the fitness equipment, we would add those in little groupings and potentially different locations in the park. And we could talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But this map is just to show you kind of the breakdown of where all the proposed improvements are at a conceptual level for the park. So tonight we did want to focus in that conversation on those active recreation improvements that we've added to the scope in response to the comments that we've heard from the community. And again, that's a conversation about the synthetic meadow resurfacing. It's a conversation about the new basketball courts and about the adult fitness equipment. So I'll talk briefly about all 3 of those, share some images, and then as we always do at these meetings, open it up to you for your comments and your input and any more suggestions that you may have for the improvements here at the park. So first we'll talk about the synthetic field surfacing. So we did, like I said, we heard comments in previous meetings about and concerns about the condition of the existing synthetic surfacing. We acknowledge and we know that field is very heavily used in the community. There's certainly a lack in Los Angeles in general, and particularly in Westlake and the surrounding communities for space to play soccer, to play football, to have a place for people to do active recreation. So we know this field is heavily used. The synthetic field here was actually originally installed in 2009. So that was when as again, longtime residents will recall, this area was dirt for the longest time. And we had a synthetic field originally installed here in 2009. We actually replaced that synthetic field surfacing in 2017. So just 4 years ago, we did undertake a replacement of that synthetic field surfacing. So the idea here is, again, in response to some of the comments and our knowledge about how that field has been used, we're proposing to go ahead and add to this scope of this grant application, again, another replacement of the synthetic surfacing with a new synthetic field surfacing. So as you can see, just sort of looking at the timeline from before, the last surfacing lasted us about 8 years. So again, given the heavy use of that field, it took about 8 years until we knew we had to replace it. So this grant would line up very well with the time frame in which we think we would need to replace that surfacing. And again, since we heard from the community that that was a concern for you, that we wanted to include that in our application. And we do think it'll make the application more competitive because it'll be highlighting for the state that we're really trying to meet some of the active recreation needs of the park. The next image, again, is just a shot, an older picture, of course, of the synthetic field that's there. Sure, like I said, as I know that we're all familiar with, because we know it's used not only to play soccer, it's used for a variety of activities. So we think that adding that to the scope would be a good enhancement. And again, we would think it'll make our grant application much more competitive. So that was a great suggestion that was brought up in the last meeting. The next item we wanted to bring up were new basketball courts. So again, we heard a lot of commentary about the lack of active recreational amenities in the park and where there could potentially be opportunities to do those. So we know that the nearest basketball courts, the outdoor courts, are located just west of MacArthur Park, over at Lafayette Park. So there is a need. I mean, we recognize that there certainly is a need for additional outdoor active recreational amenities. So you'll see on here, just highlighted on the map, is conceptually where we would like to locate those basketball courts. The idea would be to add potentially 2 basketball courts here in this area. That we know, of course, that this is the old picnic area, and there are some palm trees there and other trees in that location. So certainly we'd have to, if we were successful in this grant, look at how to properly put those fields there, or those basketball courts there, excuse me, so that they don't cause any additional conflicts, but also so that they're in a good location for folks to be able to use. But we do think there's sufficient room in that area to add additional active recreational resources. And we think, again, based on the comments that we heard, that basketball courts would be a good amenity to add. One thing to note is, as you are likely aware, most of our basketball courts are unfenced. They're open. We know MacArthur Park is a very open park. There's not a lot of fences inside the park. And we want to make sure to keep sort of that look and feel going. So just so it's clear, we're thinking about adding basketball courts here, but they would not be fenced off from the majority of the park. So that's why it's really important that if we are successful as a grant, we really dive into that design to make sure that they fit and they work well in this space. But we think this is a good location to add new active amenities. Finally, so these are some pictures, sorry, of just some basketball court installs in some of our other parks. Again, the picture on the left shows a full court basketball court with a half court behind it. So again, it's kind of one thing we could explore potentially given the space. And the picture on the right is actually, this is down in Leland Park, down in the harbor, that shows recent install of 2 basketball courts that are side by side to each other. So there, again, just to kind of give you the idea that there's a number of different options we could do when we look in more detail at the space. But we certainly think there's an opportunity to add basketball courts to MacArthur Park. Finally, we wanted to talk about additional outdoor fitness equipment. So as I said earlier, we know that the park has outdoor fitness equipment, which is located just north of the synthetic meadow, right up against that synthetic field, that synthetic turf that's heavily used. And again, just like the original synthetic field, it was installed in 2009 with some outdoor fitness equipment that we got from one of our vendors named Greenfields. But we did hear from you in the community that there were some concerns about the safety and that people were potentially being hit by balls, or just that outdoor installation was just too close to synthetic field. So taking that into account, and then again, thinking about ways where we could add more active recreational resources, we were looking at potentially adding outdoor fitness in maybe a couple of different areas of the park. So just shown in the map, again, are conceptually 2 different ideas for where we could put outdoor fitness installations in the park. There's a variety of ways we can do these. Of course, when we get to the design phase, we can do them sort of as a circuit that would be located along the walking paths, or we can install them as like kind of a single site. So very similar to the one that we have where all the equipment is grouped into one location. We can do it that way, or we can kind of arrange the pieces along a pathway or along some of the walkways in the park to give sort of a fitness circuit look to it. So those are some of the ideas and different ways we can approach it. But the idea here is that add more opportunities for adults to do outdoor fitness and really have outdoor exercise opportunities that are away from the very active synthetic field that's there. So we'd be adding additional equipment to what we already have. And the next couple of images are just to show you some of the other installations that we have done or that have been proposed. So here, just showing you on the left an installation we have down in Wilmington, which is a different kind of fitness equipment. So it's not the machines, but just an example of some of the different things our vendors can do and different opportunities they can give us for outdoor exercise equipment. On the right is an image of fitness equipment that we have at Jim Gillingham Park. And here's just sort of to show that fitness equipment is certainly can be fully accessible for people of all ages and abilities. So here, this graphic just shows you sort of how some of the fitness equipment is available to people who may be using wheelchairs. So these are some of the things we can do. And that picture also shows you the idea of if you did fitness equipment in more of a circuit format along a walking path, kind of what that would look like. Because at Jim Gilliam, we have them spread out in stations in and around the park. So just again, just to show you that there's a variety of ways we can integrate outdoor fitness opportunities into the park in different areas. And then finally, just the next two pictures are some future outdoor fitness equipment installations that we're working on. One on the left is a park out in the valley, which again, to show you an idea of showing you kind of a fitness station look that's in a single site versus being on a circuit, but is not machined. So sort of your typical parallel bars or different opportunities for people to work out on, so a little bit more flexibility. But again, kind of just to show that you can do them in a single site installation. They don't have to always be the machines. But on the right is another one that we're working on, also in Council District 1 over in Elysian Park. And this is to show you, again, we can do a different installation with machines, but we can group them in a certain format. And in that example, that one has an integrated shade structure over top of the fitness equipment to provide a nice kind of welcoming environment as you're using that equipment. So these images are just to show you that there's a variety of different ways that we can integrate additional outdoor fitness opportunities into the park, just in response to some of the comments that we heard about the need for that, the need for something for seniors to do, and the idea that maybe moving some of the fitness equipment away from the synthetic field would be a good idea. So that's what we wanted to show you tonight, with sort of some of the changes we made, different opportunities we saw to add outdoor activities and recreational opportunities in the park. And we think these enhancements will be of great benefit to the application, that they will make it a stronger application. And just again, to show you that based on some of the comments we heard from you in the earlier meetings, we tried to incorporate a lot of that into the grant as it's going forward. So again, here for your questions. And again, you see the slide in front of you to please type your questions in the chat box. But I just wanted to, again, personally just thank everyone. I know Luis said at the beginning for coming out tonight to participate in this meeting, and we look forward to any comments or input you may have for us or any questions.
Thank you, Daryl. So we have arrived at our questions and answers section, and we'll go over some of the questions and answers you have. First is from Marco. Thank you. You said it was a very nice presentation, and let me know how I can help to promote the use of parks. Next question is I love the Proposition 68 projects presented. As you well stated, kids and the community at large in the Westlake area are in need of more sport and fun activities at the MacArthur Park. However, security is an issue, with the homeless currently using the parks as a shelter. The homeless population needs to be relocated from the park for the community to enjoy the park. Otherwise, no improvement will attract the community to better use the park. Is there a plan for the homeless to be relocated? I'm not sure if Luis is still here.
Stephen, this is Bill Jones. I'll field that one.
Okay.
All city departments, but especially Rec and Parks, is working very closely with the council offices and the mayor's office and the housing department to find alternatives for the homeless. We recognize that the homeless are a distraction in our parks, and at times we have to involve either our park rangers or the LAPD to deal with them at times. But the idea is that we are trying to work with those agencies to find alternatives, to find temporary and on to permanent housing for many of our homeless brothers and sisters that are on the street. So that's where we're at. The improvements certainly will make it more attractive for the community. And to your point of security, we absolutely can add additional security cameras and lighting to this project as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Do we have any more questions and answers? Yumi, are there any on Facebook Live?
We do have one question regarding golf. Is it possible, or is there time to open or install putting greens and practice bunkers?
I guess I'll, this is Daryl, I can go ahead and jump in here. So the short answer is we try to keep our golf facilities and improvements located close to our golf courses. We only have one sort of area in the park where or one park in our system that I can think of where there are putting greens that are not located next to a golf course. It's sort of not something we traditionally do. Again, it's Jim Gilliam Park actually in South LA that does have a small putting green area next to it, but it's not traditionally something that we do. So we do try to get our golf resources, again, located close to those existing golf facilities that we have in the city. And that's, it just seems to work a lot better there because that's where the golfers are. But it's not something that we looked at, but it's definitely an interesting suggestion to bring up.
Thank you, Daryl. So I don't see any new questions on Zoom, and we'll wait for a few more minutes, for you to think of anything else you'd like to ask us, or you want to provide us with any comment. Okay, so I don't see any new questions or comments. So I'd like to, Luis had to leave us tonight for another meeting, but on behalf of Department of Recreation and Parks, I'd also like to point out, for you to complete the survey in the chat box, if you can. That'll help us out, tremendously with, future meetings. But on behalf of Rec and Parks and on behalf of CD1, we'd like to thank you for having attended these meetings. And by providing us your comments, you have helped the Department of Rec and Parks create this project proposal that is a representation of your values and your interests and ideas. And that's the whole purpose of having done these 5 meetings. And so we'd like to take this opportunity to tell you that we will work hard to put together a great application for the state to consider. And on behalf of Daryl, Bill, myself, and Yumi, we wish you a wonderful rest of the evening. Thank you very much.